Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Rumi Jha, and I'll be representing Team 5. The topic for our project is Reddit follower data analysis. So, uh, let's begin. Hardik, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So the things that we'll be covering on our presentation will be the scope of our project, the architecture diagram, ER model, how are we loading the data into our destination, and the data analysis about the data that we have loaded. Next slide, please. Okay. So the objective that we have focused in our project is that we are determining the number of followers of a given user. The second objective is how many followers a followee has. Then we are determining the top 50 username with the highest followers. The fourth objective that we have focused on is the number of active user over the year. And finally, we are determining the trending subreddits. That is the comments a follower has. So in the architecture diagram, for the data source, we have used JSON and the CSV file in which we have the raw data. Then we have a scheduler which we have set up in the Windows server, which is fetching the data from these data sources, performing the ETL and the necessary transformation needed as per the requirement. And then finally, we are loading the data into our SQL server. And at the end, for the data visualization and analysis purpose, we have used Tableau. Next slide. So this is the ER model for our project. For the relational data, so we have covered 3 data models in the project. That is the relational, document, and the graph data model. In the relational data model, we have the data for our users and the subreddit information. For our document data model, we have the posts that that a follower or a user have posted over the years. And in the graph data model, we have the information about the follower and the followee. So in the user, we have username, password, and the profile URL. Subreddit, we have the subreddit ID and the name, which is needed to determine the information about the subreddits. And from there, which is also the primary key for our post. That is how we are connecting our document and the relational data model. And follower information we are connecting through the username in a relational model. That is how we are connecting the 3 models together and fetching the information needed, which is defined in the scope. Okay. Next, please. So for, like I said earlier, we have scheduler job in our Windows server. So this scheduler is run on a daily basis at 7 p.m. in the evening. So it is fetching the source data file, which is the CSV and the JSON file using a Python file. And it is performing all the necessary transformation and loading the data in the SQL server. In our first run, it is doing the full load of all the data that is available to us. And on the daily basis, it is doing the incremental load. And this is observed, or we are fetching the incremental load in the table by creating a log file of each process, of each received and the process file. Triggers are created to see and handle duplicate data insertion into our SQL server. Next slide. So this is a screenshot of our scheduler. At the bottom, you can see that the scheduler is scheduled at 6:48 p.m. in the evening every day. So at this time, it sees all the new file received, compares as per the log file, and see which are the only new files that are not processed, and only processes those files and not load the entire data again and again. So yeah, next slide. So this is the insertion script, which will be explained by Rishabh.
Thank you, Ravi.
Yes.
Can you stop sharing so I can share the screen?
Yeah. Rishabh, can you just start sharing the screen?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the ETL script that we have written. So first I will explain what is the source. So in the source, we have a local CSV file stored in my laptop, and we have a SQL Server database running in locally as well. So that is the target destination, and this script reads the CSV file that is stored locally and processes that data and pushes the data into the SQL Server. And to connect to the SQL Server, we have used PyODBC library in Python, and some standard data libraries like pandas and glob to find all the files based on a particular pattern. So yeah, these are all the helper functions that will help us in running the ETL script in the main scope. So we have all these functions. The first function is get processed files. So this function gets all the processed files. We have a table called file in the database. So that stores all the files that have been processed. So we don't want to process the same file again and again in the next iteration. So this function will get all the processed files. Then we have a helper function called get folder files. So this will get the files from the particular folder. So suppose we want to get the user's files. So then we will type user here as an argument in the folder name, and that will give us all the user's files. Then we have this function insert to file table. So you just have to provide the file as a string variable here. So this will insert the file name into the file table. So that in this way, we keep track of what are the files that have been already processed. Then we have a function called insert to table. So this is a generalized function in order to insert the pandas data frame into a particular table. So you just provide the pandas data frame here as a df, and then you just give the table name here. And this is a batch size. So we don't want to insert each row. We want to connect to the server and then insert each row again and again. So we will do the batch insertion in order to improve the performance. So here I've provided the 1000 as a number as a starting point. Then we have a query variable, and I'm starting counter as 0. Then these are the columns. This calls variable will store all the columns in which you want to insert the data for a particular table. And this is a boilerplate starting template for the insert statement. So here I'm starting with insert into table name, then columns in which I want to insert the data, then values. And in this loop, we will add the later part of this query into this variable. So we will read the data from the data frame iteratively. Then if we reach the batch size, then we will insert the data into the database. And if it is not the case, then we will insert the data. We will append some string value towards the to the end of this query variable. So we will get the data from each row, and we will format that string in this format, and we will append that this particular string into this variable. So in this way, we will have a proper SQL query here that we can run once we reach the batch size. Then we will execute the SQL query, and then we will commit. So this is for the case in case we reach the batch size, and whatever the data has been left, that also is going to be inserted into the database later on here in this block. So this was the generalized function for inserting data from the data frame to the particular table. And this is the master function, insert data. Here we are going to read all the files. So in this loop, this files.get table. So suppose we have different tables. We have a user table, we have a host table, then we have a subreddit table. So we are going to provide the table name here. Then this will give a list of files for a particular table, and they will loop through each file, and we will check that file has been processed or not processed. So if it is not processed, then we are going to process that file. So then we will read the data frame, and we will process that. We will get rid of all the missing values. We are using this drop any function, and follows is a graph table, a graph based table. So we are going to process that into something like in a different way. And for all the other tables, we are going to process the data in this way. So we will read the table, and we are going to use this helper function insert to table. So this is a data frame, this is a table name, and this function is going to insert that particular file into a file table. So in this way, we can keep track of process files. And for a follows table, we are going to do things differently. So here in this data frame, our aim is to like get all the user names distinctively. Like we don't want to repeat the usernames. So it is what's stored in this follower followee data frame. Then we are going to insert that into the follower followee table. And then we want to create, so this is basically a node table, and this part inserts the data for the edge table, this part. So then we get the node ID for a source, node ID for a target, and then we store that data into values list. Then we create the data frame from that values list. We drop the array, null values, then we insert the data into the follows edge table. So this was all about the insert data master function. So now we have all these functions ready. We just need to call them in our main scope. So here I'm connecting to the server. So I have connected to the server. I have got the cursor object here. So this is a data path. This is a pipeline data path. I've initialized some variables here for the data frame for different tables. Then these are all the tables that we have: user, post, subreddit, and follows. Then we have process files as a none. We will get the process files. It will return a list, and that list is going to be stored in this process files variable. Then we have all the files here. Then we are going to get the files for a particular table, for a particular user, for a post. So these are all the different tables, and these are the specific files for that particular table: users files, post files, subreddit files. Then we are creating a dictionary here. Then we will loop through all the tables and insert data. We will call this insert data function for each table. So this will call our master function, and subsequently all the other different helper functions are also going to be called, and the data is going to be inserted into the database. So this is how we like have written this Python script. So you don't want to run this Python script manually every time if whenever you want to insert the data. So as Rumi explained, we have automated this process using Windows scheduler. So this is how this script is being called every day at 7 o'clock. So now the next part comes the analytics part, the reporting and dashboard part that will be explained by the Hardik. So Hardik, now you can share the screen. I'm stopping screen sharing.
Okay. Thanks, Rishabh, for explaining the data insertion part. Now I'll take you through the dashboarding and analytics part. Can you see can you see my screen? Okay. So basically, before I jump into the data dashboard, I just want to explain what tables we are basically using on our dashboards. For that, we have created two stored procedure. First stored procedure in first stored procedure in dbo.count followers, we are using our graph database to basically create the reports for the username and their corresponding for followees. In the second stored procedure, we are basically using our document database basically to create the reports of our post data. So basically these two tables we have connected with our Tableau dashboard, which basically I'll show you in a while. And we will analyze the data through the results received from both of these queries. Before I jump into the graph database, here I just want to give you a snapshot of our graph visualization, which basically we have carried out in Power BI. So basically here we are using the follow B graph data model, basically showing how the basically followees are related with the corresponding followers. So basically, we have carried out the graph visualization basically in the Power BI. In the end, if time permits, definitely I'll share my screen and will take you through the graph visualization part. Quickly, let me take you through the Tableau or analytic dashboard, which we have basically built to carry out the analysis of our Reddit user database. So yeah, so here basically you can clearly see we have basically developed the four charts, basically four charts to understand our user analytic, to understand our user profile. In the first charts, basically shows the histogram of how distribution of number of followers with the number of users. So basically, this chart shows that, like, we have around more than 110, we have around 110,000 username users, like, who has the number of followers as one. Then we have around 110,000 followers who has the followers between 2 and 4. So we can clearly see that around our 80% of the users has the number of followers less than 9. My second chart shows how basically what are the active what are the active users in the corresponding year. So basically here we can clearly see in 2017 we had the less users, and from that from 2017 to 2018 our number of active users. So basically when I say the active users, so active users are those who has posted at least one post in a year. So that's what I termed as them as an active users. As we can clearly see, number of active users has increased from 2017 to 18, and then it has remained constant. In 2022, we can clearly see there is some dip, because there is still time left in ending 2022. My third graph shows the word cloud of subreddits. So basically this graph basically shows what are the trending subreddits in the last 3 years. And then my last chart shows what are the number of active my last basically chart shows basically the distribution of number of followers of my top 50 users. Here we can clearly see that our user auto moderator has highest number of followers with around 3,000 followers. So basically, this is the Tableau dashboard, basically giving our Reddit user analysis. So let me go back to my power presentation. So basically, here what we can conclude from our dashboard is that around our 20% of the user has less than around 100 followers, which we have clearly seen in the graph. Then around our each and every year we have around 18,000 active users that we were able to conclude through our dashboard. Our third observation was that the username with auto moderator has the highest number of followers, with the total number of followers of around 3,300. And we were able to analyze the trending subreddits, which we have basically seen in the dashboard. So basically, what we could have done, further is, like, rather than implementing this, implementing the Python code, we would have implemented the ETL data pipeline in the industry recommended tools like Alteryx or Talent. Another thing we could have done was that rather than using the Windows scheduler, we would have used other orchestration tools like Apache Airflow to schedule our data pipeline. And the third thing we could have done was, if we would have if we would have access of another better data source with more reliable data source, we would able to analyze the data in more efficient way. So yeah, this so So yeah, this was all about our projects, and we welcome any questions from audience. Yeah, any questions?
I think the question will be coming from team one.
Yes. Can you please tell how can you make sure that the project that you're doing is scalable?
Yeah, so basically here we have implemented three database: document data models, relational data models, and the graph data model. One thing we could have done to ensure the scalability was, rather than implementing the data warehouse in the local server, basically we would have implemented the data warehouse in the cloud servers like Amazon, AWS, or Azure, which would make sure our database is scalable and reliable. So something, yeah, that we would have implemented our database in cloud database like AWS or Azure to make sure our database is scalable.
Okay.
More questions or comments for team 5? Okay, team 5, could you go back to your ERD?
Yeah.
So you have several SQL tables, and you have a graph data model. So the data model was implemented using the node and the age tables, right?
Yes, Professor.
Okay. And where is your document data model?
It's a Hardik, you continue.
Yeah. So, Professor, we have stored our data of post basically in the document data model. So, yeah.
So
Our post data sets.
your document data model was implemented using or in post, right?
Yes.
But where, how was the data persisted? Was the document data persisted in the database, stored in the database, or was it just created during the processing or during using a query? I think that's my question.
Professor, I will explain. So what we have done is in post table, we have a CID, user ID, and parent ID. These three columns are stored as a regular relational columns. And then we have a one more column called more info. So this more info column is storing a big string, like a JSON formatted string, in which we have a ups, downs, contain, timestamp, and these four columns as a JSON formatted string. So whenever you wanted to access any of this particular value, ups and downs, we have used a JSON query function in the SQL Server query. So this is how we accessed this particular values, ups and downs, from the more info column, which is storing a string that is basically a JSON formatted string.
Oh, sorry, probably I didn't ask my question clearly. So how was the document data model stored in the database as documents? So was the data stored as a relational table, and then the document data model was created during the processing? I think that was my question.
Okay. So Professor, we have stored as a string this document data model information.
So the document data model data was stored as strings in a relational table, and then the document data model was generated on the fly or during the processing. Am I correct?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and could you go to your visualizations? So you have three data models. could you please walk us the parts one more time? The parts using the graph data model.
Yes, Professor. So basically here we have created this particular visualizations showing number of followers for each particular user. So that we have this we have created using the graph data model.
Okay.
For that, yeah. So let me show you the query written over here. Yeah. So here basically we have written the startup procedure to create the number of followers for the username using the graph. So here basically we are joining the nodes table and edge table to create the number of followers to calculate the number of followers for each particular users. So here we have used our graph database to create this chart.
Right. So what's the results? What's the result stored in the database? So it's just
No, the result is not stored in the database. Whenever we have just use the results directly on the dashboard. Like we have not stored
Gotcha.
the result and like we have not stored this result in any other table. We are
Okay.
just directly using this graph database tables on the dashboard.
Okay. So you can just use the regular. Was this done in Power BI or
With
Tableau?
this this is done in Tableau.
Tableau. Okay. Okay. So okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other visualization which used the graph data?
Yes, Rushabh, can you please share your screen and show us
Right.
the graph visualization in Power BI?
Yes, Hardik. Can you please stop sharing the screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
I saw that. Yeah.
Can you see the screen?
Right. Sure.
Hardik?
Yeah. This looks good. So this was created by Power BI.
Yes.
Yeah, Professor. So
Okay.
we can select any usernames and we can see the relation, like
Right.
these are the like connections.
So you installed an add-on. Did you install an add-on? So Power BI can do this graph visualization, or what part of Power BI did you use for creating this? I think that's my question.
Yeah. So Professor, we downloaded this custom Power BI app called Force Directed Graph. So
Okay.
basically it asks for the source and targets. You just provide the sources and the targets, then it will create like this graph for you. So it is basically customized graph in Power BI, we can say.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing the details. And lastly, could you go to your future scope? I like your future scope.
Yeah, Professor. Yep.
Okay, so I think that your team used a lot of Python code, and you used the Windows scheduler to run the Python code. I think that that's still pretty common in industry, but I've seen a newer projects using tools, so it's more sustainable and much less overhead. So I like your future scope or future possible improvement to adapt or to switch to this no code and the low code approach. So excellent work and excellent presentation. Thank you very much, Team 5.
Thank you,
And
Professor.
thank you for the
Thank you.
question.
Thank you, Professor.
Sure.